Thank you, John. Welcome back to Global Supply Chain Summit 2021. We are in the final session, Resilient Customer Centricity through Autonomous Planning. In this session, the panelists will discuss the importance of customer centricity, the ways in which companies can increase the resilience of customer centricity, the various business models to deploy to achieve the same. Happy to invite Mr. Malay Shankar, Chief Operating Officer of DTDC Express Limited, and as a session chairman to lead this session. Mr. Malay has more than 2 decades of professional experience. He has worked across a broad spectrum of industries, multicultural MNC organizations like Canon, Boston Scientific, DHL Express, FedEx, Tata Group, and Everstone Capital. His successful past mandates have been towards business turnaround, P&L management, driving customer centricity, and team management. He is an experienced business head with a demonstrated history of working in the logistics and supply chain industry. He is a strong business development professional skilled in negotiation, operations management, customer acquisition, sales, and customer relationship management. Over to Malay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhanumati. All those things, whatever you were saying, I just couldn't believe my ears. Is that for me? So I think, it's just I'll put it this way, Dr. Bhanumati and CII and the August panel members out over here. I think, more than all those things, whatever we discussed about, I am today very much excited about having Sahil, having Benjan on the call, having Raj on the call, having Manu, having Indranil. I think, Indranil may be a little delayed right now. But I think, we all have got a panel today to discuss certain thing which is coming straight out of COVID. Okay? And we all agree that COVID-19, especially that pandemic, is absolutely the stress test that caught every organization by surprise, which allowed none of these organizations to prepare, which generally you tend to prepare quite a lot in advance. But this was something which was everybody was taken by surprise. Everyone was caught unaware, right? And organizations thereafter had to contend with some very sharp spikes, whether that was in demand or decline in the consumer demand or the production downtime or the supply and the transportation delays, so on and so forth. A lot many things happened, right? So essentially what crisis did was that it exposed the underlying complexities and obviously the vulnerabilities of the global supply chains. Correct. I think after the COVID-19 pandemic, there are 5 key changes, and we have got Sahil and our other panel members, Benjan, Manu, who are the guys of our Indranil, or for that matter, Raj, who have been fighting this day in, day out. So I won't take much of time, but I think, what I will request all the panel members and to kind of take us through the experience, and what possibly we will require is that we discuss more about the practical examples, whatever came across, and thereafter how we took care of it. Obviously, the key line being that the resilience in this customer centricity, and especially the autonomous planning part of it. So what, as we move forward so we have got close to time till 5 o'clock. So over a period of next a little over 1 to 1.5 hours time, let us first of all hear from Sahil, as you know, because Sahil comes from a background, and I'll request Sahil to introduce himself to the kind of things, whatever he has done. It will be very nice to hear directly from himself. So let's hear from Sahil, and thereafter what we'll do is that, Sahil has prepared for all of us an amazing presentation which talks about the various complexities, and given his consulting background and the kind of companies with which he has consulted with, I think he'll be one of those key members to set the tone for the discussion forward. And of course, it will be a learning experience for not only about all the people on the panel, but also all our audiences. So Sahil, on that note, what I will say is that this is over to you. quickly, why don't you introduce yourself and take us through the presentation what we have, and thereafter what I understand is that you have got some engagement for which you'll be moving on, and thereafter we'll be having this panel discussion among all of the rest of the members over here. Right. So over to you, Sahil.
Thank you, Malay. And also thanks for raising the expectations. If I can just very quickly introduce myself to the group, I'm an associate partner at McKinsey and Company in the Tokyo office. Born and raised in Delhi, but after that I have spent my time across the US, France, and now in Japan. Most of the work that I do is with global consumer companies, consumer goods companies, and on multiple topics, on topics around supply chain, manufacturing, procurement. But as Malay has mentioned, supply chains have really been hard hit by COVID-19. And this is something which is really critical for our clients. This is something that's on the top of the mind, not just for the COOs, but for the CEOs. How do you build resilience in your supply chain? How do you plan in under so much uncertainty? So what I wanted to do today, the rest of the panel will bring these examples to life. But what I wanted to do today was to spend a little bit of time just to share some of the findings that we have based on our experience of working with multiple companies, and to talk a little bit about autonomous planning and how autonomous planning is disrupting the way supply chain planning is conducted by companies across industries. So now if we look at how the business environment has changed over the last few years, customers, consumers, their demands have increased. The expectation on service levels, the expectations on lead times are becoming a lot more demanding. And what we also see is that this is specific to the expectations that they have from larger brands. If you look at some of the KPIs, what we have seen customers, consumers demanding is OTIFs to the tune of higher than 85%. Lead times in the new channel of delivering direct to customers is 1 to 2 days, something that was completely unheard of a few years back. And forecast accuracy, in spite of the uncertainty, the expected demand requirement is to the tune of higher than 80%. And as Malay had introduced earlier, COVID-19 has affected industries, and it has had long-lasting effects on supply chains. And this is, again, not something that's restricted to any particular industry. This is something that we've seen across multiple industries. And how does it, so what we did as a firm was conduct surveys of our client companies, of companies that have been faced with these specific issues. And what we learned was that the footprint that each company operates with, their suppliers, their production, their distribution has seen changes. You can imagine if you have suppliers in China, Southeast Asia, depending on the timing that different countries shut down, there has been an impact on your supply. Depending on where you are producing, even in India, depending on the shutdown, you've had issues on your production. And this has put a very strong pressure on planning. 48% of the companies that executives that we talked to mentioned that they have experienced delays in planning decisions. And a lot of them did feel that planning is something that is challenging. They've tried to adapt digital technologies, but have struggled in really applying digital in order to drive better planning decisions. So one, so what we feel as a firm is to really adapt to these trends, to really make sure that you are meeting the needs of the customers, the consumers. It's important to keep the customer at the center of the supply chain and have an integrated end-to-end view of the supply chain. And again, this is the end-to-end supply chain, so it includes your manufacturing, it includes how you how you're managing your supply, it includes fulfillment, it includes planning. But for the purpose of this session, let's keep our focus for now on planning and look at how integrated end-to-end planning has evolved, and the opportunities that autonomous planning brings for the industry to really meet these changing customer needs. So now if we talk a little bit about autonomous planning, if I go from left to right, where we see most companies today is that their planning cycles are traditional. It's either a linear approach to planning, where you start off with your budget, you do your demand planning, you do your supply planning, and then you have your S&OP session to try and match your demand with supply. Or companies are a little more advanced, where demand and supply do collaborate and take joint decisions on how you manage supply and demand. But 1 and 2 is basically where we see most of the companies that we work with today. The ambition, the need of the hour is to move more towards the right, which is how do you drive decisions that are more real time? How do you incorporate the data that you're collecting from your supply chain to optimize decisions? And how do you automate some of these decisions so that you are able to focus the energy of your supply planners, demand planners on more value added activities? So now autonomous planning, it's a big word that gets thrown around quite a lot, but there are 5 key benefits, 5 key areas that autonomous planning is trying to address. The first thing that autonomous planning is trying to do is to make sure that there is a single source of truth. What we see in companies is that marketing is basing decisions based on one number. The supply chain is taking decisions based on one number. Procurement, manufacturing have a different view of the world. Autonomous planning brings everyone to the same platform and ensures that there's a single source of truth for everyone to drive decisions. The second key element, benefit of autonomous planning, is the statistical rigor. Optimization models, analytical models can be built into the planning exercise, and decisions are driven based on data rather than past experience. The third element, which I personally feel is a critical one, is there is a segmented approach. You have multiple stakeholders in your supply chain, and you have multiple needs of each one of these stakeholders. What autonomous planning does is you are able to customize your interface, you're able to customize the information based on the specific needs of that specific stakeholder. So supply chain needs to look at a certain thing, marketing needs to look at a certain thing, and then your fulfillment needs to look at a certain thing. The fourth element is around concurrent planning, avoiding delays and making sure that decisions that are made at one area are connected and transferred and made available to the other stakeholders, which allows for live scenario planning as well. And then finally, automation. What we do see is, and what we saw with COVID as well, was there was a lot of firefighting. There was a lot of focus on planners trying to use disconnected spreadsheets to figure out what the forecasted demand would be. But it's not possible to do it because there's so much uncertainty in the system. Automation, and again, automation leveraging all of these analytical rhythms allows the solution to do a lot of this heavy lifting, so that planners can focus more on understanding trade-offs, taking decisions which cannot be outsourced to the machine. Autonomous planning, it's fairly new in terms of adoption. We've started to see some of the leading companies adopt it in specific areas of their planning. For example, P&G is leveraging this for planning at their manufacturing sites. Nestle is using this for demand planning. And there are other company cases as well of early adopters who are leveraging certain aspects of automation within their planning. And there's a whole plethora of tech players that are innovating in this area. So depending on the specific needs of the organization, depending on the value proposition of these tech players, there is an opportunity to identify what fits your specific need and adapt it to your specific organization. And the impact is that we've seen companies drive inventory improvements to the tune of 20 to 30%. Forecast accuracy is up, and supply chain costs are going down. And these costs are, of course, on the inefficiencies that build up in the supply chain as a result of all of the different things around inventory, around bad forecast accuracy. So as we mentioned on the previous page as well, it's autonomous planning is critical. It really does help organizations improve performance across revenue capture. And this revenue capture is by avoiding out of stocks and making sure that you have higher on the shelf availability, inventory holding costs, and then supply chain cost as a whole. But again, this is not something which is easy. And there are certain things that the organization needs to believe in. There are certain things that the organization needs to get right to really make autonomous planning stick. And we've synthesized these into 5 key aspects. The first one is to believe in the system and allow the machine to do the job, allow the machine to leverage the analytical models to provide the insights. The second one is advanced analytics. There is a lot of data generated within supply chains. What supply chains organizations struggle with is how to leverage that data. Advanced analytics is one of the key pillars of autonomous planning, which allows you to leverage that data to drive decisions. The third one is to go beyond S&OP. S&OP has worked pre-COVID. S&OP still does continue to work in the current business atmosphere, but you lose out on the aspects around real-time optimization. You lose out on the aspects of automation. So it's important to think beyond, aspire beyond S&OP. The fourth one is really inducting this in the business. And what this means is having your processes set up in a way where autonomous planning is built into the processes, having performance managed, having KPIs which track adherence and which track the impact that autonomous planning is generating. And then finally, to bring all of this together, having the right capabilities in the organization to lead this initiative. And what we also try to understand from our clients and from some of our surveys was what really drives this change. What we noticed was that there is a strong interest in organizations. 98% of the company's executives that we surveyed responded with a strong interest in implementing next generation planning. However, they were all struggling with very similar things. They were struggling with the fact that the impact that they were expecting to generate from autonomous planning was not there, or they were struggling with project delays, or they were struggling with budget overruns. And when we tried to understand what was causing these issues, it came out it came out to four key issues, four risks that we saw. The first one, which is organizational, which is around accountability. Large programs were set up, but accountability, change management systems were not in place. The second one was around processes. Processes were not designed well, or the requirements of the specific process designs were not established. The third one was organizational capabilities. Either the organizational capabilities for implementation were not established, or capabilities to deliver on the planned impact. And then finally, misalignment. So the misalignment between business and IT is something that should be avoided, and it's critical for the business to really understand what IT can deliver, and for IT to understand the business needs to really make this successful. So what we've done, what we advise companies to do, is to really focus on four elements to make sure that the technology sits. And those four elements are first, ensuring that you really rewire your organization, understand how performance is measured in the organization, have dashboards which can help you monitor that performance. The second one, which is processes, which makes sure that you have the right processes to incorporate autonomous planning on, and have clear SNOPs to make sure that people follow those processes. The third element is around digitization. Supply chain digitization is required for autonomous planning, and it's important to make sure that these tools are not sitting outside the business, but are completely embedded within the business. And then the final key element is the people aspect. Having the right capabilities, having the right people, ensuring that the right change management measures are in place to make this change stick is critical to a successful supply chain transformation to implement autonomous planning. And then finally, just to bring all of our lessons together, there are 6 key things that we've learned. The first one is the fact that agility works. It's agility helps shorten delivery time, and that should be the core of what autonomous planning is achieving. Second, data, as was mentioned at the earlier part of this presentation as well. Data is at the core of autonomous planning. There's a lot of data that organizations generate, but this data is never used or is misused. So making sure that data is at the core of the transformation. People, ensuring that the right talent is there, ensuring that the talent is motivated to work in the organization. The fourth one is around aiming for scale. It's critical to ensure that you don't do this in one small aspect of the organization, but to really think about how you can scale technologies, how you can embed this in the larger organization for it to be successful. And then the fifth point is partnership between the business side and the IT side, because business without IT is not able to achieve this, and IT without understanding business needs is never going to be able to achieve this. And then the final key element is leadership. And I hope the group acknowledges that in order to really impose the change, in order to really make the change stick, leaders need to role model this change. The change story needs to be clear, and showing the way is critical for this specific change to happen. So this was my view, my personal short view as a firm as well on what autonomous planning is, the value that this brings to our specific clients, to organizations that are struggling with planning. What I'd like to do now is just pause for a little while, maybe get some questions from the panel. Anything?
Sure, Sahil. So first of all, thank you so much for taking us through a pretty difficult subject in a very lucid way. Uh, so yes, each one of us would be definitely having a question, or the participants or the other audiences would be having the questions. I have got one quick question. I think that was a beautiful slide where you said that people traditionally are moving from left to the right side, correct? If you refer back to that, to the traditional methods, to the other methods, and thereafter towards the autonomous planning. My question to you is this, or for the benefit of everyone, which is the biggest factor do you think is or which is the biggest roadblock to attain or walk towards autonomous planning? Is that the lack of data? Is that the commitment from the leadership? Is it the talent available? Or is it because you don't have assisted or assistance around? Say, for example, maybe you require consultants, because planning typically is very much in-house stuff, right? Everybody would want to keep that in-house. Now, if it involves so much of things for autonomous, which is the best method? So there are two parts to this question. What is the biggest roadblock? Basis all your experiences, whatever you ever had. And second, if those roadblocks are taken care of, does it always require assisted method to, because you also mentioned that it's a transformation. So any transformation cannot be walked alone. You require some amount of, support coming in from, say, companies like yours or anybody else for that matter, correct? So what is your take on this, Sahil? I'm just quickly.
Yeah. Very, very, very fair question, and thanks, Malay, for raising that. I think when it comes to roadblocks, it depends on where you are in the journey. For companies that are still starting to think about what they want to achieve, I think the biggest roadblock is leadership commitment. It's important to have commitment from the leadership. It's important to have a clear vision of what you are trying to achieve for any change to happen. Once you start on the journey, then you start to face some of the operational roadblocks, which is where the question on whether you have the right technology, whether you have the right people, whether you have the right implementation roadmap come in. But I think the critical element over there is the entry point, the leadership commitment, which needs to come in. The second point, which you mentioned around, it's a transformation. It's fairly complicated. Can companies take this on themselves, or is it something that requires support from the outside? Again, I think it does help in the beginning to have support in defining the vision, but then this again goes back to the specific needs of the company. There are companies out there who have led large transformations without external support, and they've been fairly successful at it. But there are other companies who either struggle with setting the aspiration, with setting the with mobilizing the organization, with selecting technology partners. So depending on the specific issue that the organization is facing, you can either go with the option of doing it on your own, go with the option of having a guide per se to walk the journey with you, or get dedicated support on the aspects that you're struggling on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think it does make a lot of sense. We wish that had you been around, then we could have carried on this conversation for a little longer period of time, and especially some of our participants and panel members definitely would have had a lot of questions coming across to you, right? But I understand that since you have to move on and keeping the interest of the available time with us. So are you around in Sahil, or you will be moving on?
I have to drop off for a call.
So thank you so much, Sahil. Thank you so much for this. I think this has been absolutely great. And as I said, offline and otherwise as well, some of us will definitely be looking forward to some of these helps which can be coming across, right?
Yes.
It has been an incredible thing. Thank you so much, Sahil, for this.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I wish you the best of luck for the remaining session. Thanks. Cheers.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Okay, so now we definitely have the amazing panel of Manu, Indranil, Benjan, Raj. Thank you so much, guys, for patiently, listening to some of those very complex stuff, which I personally call it, because when I say complex, more from a perspective of how to go about implementing it. Right? So here it is. We have got Manu, who has been he is the director and global head of contract logistics for freight systems for more than 25 years. We have Indranil, who is the executive vice president of Shipra, right? Has a lot of things which he has done over a period of time, whether that was Club Factory, Flipkart, or Ola. We have Benjan, who is the head supply chain of Orient Electric. I know for sure that Benjan has had various, I will say, experiences right from manufacturing to trading and engineering sectors and logistics. Correct. And we also have Raj, who has been with Wall India. So for some of you, since I keep a beard, I can say that I definitely use a Wall product. Thank you, Raj, for that. And he is the head of supply chain, and he has got more than 19 years of experience across various organizations, right from Mahindra and Mahindra to Johnson, Jaycom Electronic, so on and so forth. So essentially what we have is people who have been executing similar things on the ground. I think there cannot be anything more than the executioners themselves being present on the call and possibly helping us out to understand how is that during these tough times they have been able to drive customer centricity in their organizations. Some examples, some of those stuff, correct? So I think I will quickly request Manu to kind of introduce himself to the entire panel, and definitely to take. So my first question goes across to Manu. That Manu, in your organization, which is Freight System, wherein you have been battling a very different kind of challenge, wherein demand is far much more higher than the supply. That's what I understood a few days back. How is that Manu still is being able to maintain the customer centricity during this tough times? Over to you, Manu.
Well, thank you, Malay, and hi everybody. It was a very interesting session before this, so I'm glad the tech part and autonomous stuff has been taken care of by our good friend Sahil. So let me just quickly introduce myself. Like you said, I'm the director and global head for a Dubai-based company called Freight Systems, and we are an end-to-end supply chain company providing solutions on international freight forwarding, warehousing, distribution, and more recently into e-commerce also. So I'll just the topic is quite a mouthful if you look at it: resilient customer centricity through autonomous planning. So I think for me, in the order, I would say customer centricity is really uppermost today, right? So I was introduced to a new word recently, right? See, this COVID pandemic has taught us all many harsh lessons, and the word's ambiguity is testing our agility. So as someone said, we can't control the weather, but we can and must adjust our sails, right? Mm-hmm. And this has given birth to a new word, which is a combination of ambiguity and agility. And the word is ambigility, okay? Wow. Mm-hmm. So this was actually coined by the chief operating officer of Korn Ferry Institute. And he said something very remarkable, which is relevant today. And knowledge is, I quote him, knowledge is what we know, but it takes ambiguity to acknowledge that what we don't know and can't control, right? So in this situation, the service providers like ourselves and supply chain solutions companies really need to think outside the box. And in this situation of ambiguity, and we've heard VUCA before, but pandemic has taken it to a different level, right? So we have to be constantly thinking of new solutions outside the box. Now, coming more specifically, to freight systems and so what I want to say is, of course, Mahatma Gandhi's words were still echoing in our mind. Customers, we have to be customer centric. But today, the old rules of customer centricity, like engagement, relationships, service levels, they have now got to go to a different level, because you have to be thinking on your feet. The challenges change from day to day, right? So while you have customers where you have good relationships, but you may not have a solution in place, right? And we have to think outside the box, like I said. So now, let's say in our case, just things like, for example, we are now working on solutions via Dubai for ocean freight. Now, the ocean freight prices to US are now, it's really hit the roof. Like, we get quotes for direct sailing, $15,000, $18,000, depending on, the availability and what is the destination, etc., and the routing of the vessel. And in spite of customers willing to pay such exorbitant rates, we have a problem of space. When I say we, the entire trade. Correct. And there are many, many reasons for that, right from, blank sailings to shortage of containers, demand in US, westbound, and then COVID has re-emerged in China. So there are complexities of issues, and of course, imbalance of equipment. So, but what we have found is a unique solution, Malay, where we are now consolidating cargo in India and moving it on short-haul vessels to Dubai. And as we all know, that Dubai is one of the most efficient ports, and there is more availability of direct sailings into the East Coast as well as West Coast. So we are doing this as an offering. We're consolidating India cargo, moving it to Dubai, and then we are then reworking the cargo in Dubai, obviously on a new container, and booking on US slots. So this is just one of the solutions, and now we are also looking at another solution where moving break bulk cargo from Dubai, because there's huge demand. I have customers having 50 containers, each of them not getting space, although the price is secondary at this time. So, like I said, the ability to think of solutions which are out of the ordinary will actually strengthen the bond with the customer, and when it comes to customer-centric solutions, I would say, right? So I'm going to stop here, and I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thanks, Manu. I think that was really nice. See, I think what I liked the fact was that I won't use the word thinking out of the box, but something wherein it's not only taking care of the customers, but being around with them with some very innovative solution like what your organization has gone ahead and done. Definitely, helps during this time. Thanks, Manu. So what I'll do is that I'll come back to you, but I have got a quick question to Raj. So Raj having he's a supply chain head and director for Wall India. Obviously, I will request Raj to introduce himself quickly. But I have had a very interesting observation, which possibly later on Indraneel can also touch bases on that. The interesting observation, Raj, was that during this COVID lockdown, your products actually fall under non-essential category, right? And that was the product which the maximum amount of people actually required it at that point in time, right? Because all these saloons, all those things were shut down. So how is that Raj, as the head of supply chain, took all those customer centricities into the account, and because we are discussing that, and how is that Raj and his team took care of that spikes and those demands and all those things, essential versus non-essential coming across. So over to you, Raj. So quickly do introduce yourself.
Thanks, Malay. Thank you so much, and very good evening to everyone on the panel. It's quite interesting. Just to give a short introduction, it's almost like 21 years now in the field of supply chain. Glad to be there, still young and energetic, and passion to learn and grow. That one burning passion is there, so that keeps me moving on in terms of learning. And thanks to CII for giving such kind of a platform with great veterans like you all. Thank you. Coming back to the very interesting question what Malay just put across, it was quite true last year. When COVID was announced, initially there was quite a lot of ambiguity. Okay, which product will fall under the essential category, which is under non-essential category. First, at least 30 to 45 days, there was a huge amount of confusion from the bodies itself defining essential and non-essential. In phase two, after a period of around say 40 days, when government rolled out next general saying that, okay, these are all the additional added essential items, there we got a privilege of being identified our personal grooming product into the category of essential category. So we had a opportunity to move in our category through the essentials, since salons are being shut down and everyone's need is personal grooming. And unfortunately, Indian tradition is still we are like happy to go to salon and get self grooming rather than we don't have that kind of a culture where you do the self grooming other than the basic of your shaving and bearding. Rest everything in the haircut or anything you need a styling, you always look for the proper salons. So that was one back of the mind. The trade issue was always there. The out of the box thinking where we got the opportunity is the e-com platforms. Wall was already getting into the e-com platform, but our plan and the aggression was a bit slower because Wall initially got into the industry with the professional. Wall is known in the industry for a professional segment, and we were targeting the consumer in the segment also, but it was a quite less focus. We wanted to gradually come in because industry for a consumer market is huge, and the competition as also is quite huge because there are trimmers and the clippers which is available in the market, right starting from 600 rupees. Wherein the professional segment, if you see the trimmers or clippers, it starts itself like 4,000, a decent amount of 4,500 to 5,000 rupees. That's the the price gap what we had. So Wall never wanted to compromise on the quality and the standard of the product. So price barrier was always one of the concern. But we were already in the line of introducing a next level consumer product segment. And COVID turned out to be a blessing in disguise kind of a situation for us, where for many of the organization, COVID turned out to be a challenging. And for us, opening up the e-commerce platform was a great blessing. We fortunately we had a good amount of inventory because we planned very great things and great numbers for 2020. And entry of COVID in 2020, by then, I would say it was not a planned inventory what we had high. It was somewhere the demand versus supply fluctuations, and we were preparing for the 2020 festive cycle for the consumer division. And we were hit by COVID and we had a good amount of inventory. On the other hand, we had a pressure saying that you have so much of inventory, consumer segment inventory. And that was a botheration for us, for our management, that so much of cash flow has been already blocked. And we got this opportunity, wherein we fell into the category of essential and the consumer segment got opened. And if you look at, if you now see, there is a time for us to compare and see, okay, last year COVID versus this year COVID scenario kind of a timeline has come where we are able to evaluate between two different years, the season of buying pattern from the customer behavior side of it. Last year, it was more of a panic buying. Everybody was under the panic buying and storing it, though it's the grooming or though it's a food or it's a grocery. No one was having that visibility. How long? Because every time it was a 21 days extension. And people are expecting that in 42 days it will get over, or in 50, 60 days it will get over. The moment it went on prolonging, people started creating more, panic buying. And the sales got shut up like anything. And one fine time we reached to a situation saying that, okay, we are near to stock out. And the situation was like, okay, inventory is now as good as a close to stock out situation. But because the pandemic has hit globally, even the stores had a problem.
Yeah.
So people had to think through a larger picture rather than just looking at only for India. They had to do a bigger change in terms of planning, in terms of manufacturing setup, where we have a lesser amount of impact, where the manufacturing can be run down and all that factor. Now, cutting down this entire subject short here, just I will zip it up. This is how we managed it. The COVID turned out to be a great platform for us to build it up. Now, when I look at last year versus this year, now this year is more of a mature buying. It is not that everybody is buying the clipper and trimmer, but people are aware it is not bad to have an equipment for a self-grooming at home. With a basic learning with an online platform, you are able to manage with somebody's assistant in your family. You are able to do at least a decent kind of grooming. If you are still at the back of the mind, there is a fear of hygiene and infections, or that factor is there, you are able to sustain. You are able to do a self-grooming. We are able to do that if I give my own example, in last say 18 months or so, probably I've been only once to the salon. Only once. With a great courage, I just stepped out once to the salon and then stepped back. But rest all the years, the grooming is done at my home with the family members, the help. So that has given the mature mind now. And what we have seen, one thing, our customers now gone to a center, from the customer centric point of view. Nowadays, customers not looking at how much of effort you're putting as an organization to bring the material on time or delivering the commitment, or you keep all the parameters of customer deliverables, whatever we have. The customer wants the result. It's a common consumer, or it's a B2B, or it's a B2C. The final result from, we can say it's a VOC from the customer is very clear. The amount of investment what you do in technology, the amount of investment what you do in the the logistics part or warehousing or a last mile delivery, it is totally immaterial to them. It is finally they look for result. I place an order, I need the visibility, I need the condition of material and goods on time receipt. That's it. Now this is somewhere it's quite challenging for a B2B model, because B2C model behavior impacting to B2B model also. To one extent, if you see B2C kind of a behavior is already imparted in B2B. Even the manufacturers or the bulk level distributors, they are also demanding similar kind of an experience, saying that when I get it from an e-com platform, such kind of an experience, you being in a multinational company, why can't you offer us in a B2B platform? So now that's the place where we come across the terms like VUCA, or as Manu rightly said it, the new terminology come in. Everybody is on the toss. Now that's the battle for us. How soon we'll be able to keep the momentum and the consistency on towards this direction of the customer, irrespective of the B2B or a B2C. Customer demands has come to a one common platform, and we can see it is common across the game. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Raj. I think what was coming very important and very I found that very interesting is that one is how is that you manage to I won't say you manage to have it as a part of the essential, but I think you definitely convince the right set of people. Most importantly, and this part I was not aware that Wall initially would have thought to go the professional way first and then the consumer segment later. But here is a COVID which threw up a very different kind of challenge, wherein possibly you have to take care of the consumer first, that the professional part of it, or that professional that channel. So I definitely will come back to you, Raj. Those are very interesting things which you mentioned. Because you touched upon that e-commerce part of it, we have Indranil with us, and Indranil is definitely a veteran in the e-commerce industry, and so obviously he has worked with Plug Factory, Flipkart, Ola. Will definitely quickly introduce themselves on that. So Indranil, before you introduce yourself, I will also leave a question behind to you. The question is exactly taking from where Raj left. So Raj mentioned about the shift in pattern. So people have changed their habits, or they're trying to change their habits. Raj himself went to the professionals just to have his haircut done for the last 18 months, and all this while he had been self-grooming or with the help of others. So essentially what it is talking about is that there is a clear-cut shift in buying behavior of the customers being there. There is a clear-cut shift in the profile of the customers who are coming online and buying that. Some of our own studies, because at DTDC and DPD, we found out that the kind of customers who are buying online, there are some lot of senior citizens also coming in, correct? So with this entire profile changing, how difficult is it for Indranil's team to live up to the expectation of his end consumers or the customers whomsoever he is dealing with? So over to you, Indranil.
Thanks a lot, Malay sir. It is always a privilege to have participated in a CII forum and with such an audience out there. With a lot of due respect. So I'm Indranil, been there in this e-commerce industry since almost been like 10 years right now. Initially started with Flipkart, like when Flipkart was in nobody's mind, right? So when Flipkart was hardly doing another 300 shipments per day. So started my career at that point of time with Flipkart and the e-commerce industry per se, and still now continuing with startups and all. kind of a, you can say, like veteran startup-ish guy, you can say in that sense. So yeah, I work currently in Shiprocket, and I had the supply part out here and supply and operations, and work as an EVP out here. So coming back to Malay sir's point, right? So let's see, COVID, obviously, I would say from a across the world perspective, it has been a moment of kind of like a black swan kind of a moment, right? And nobody was prepared to to adopt it. There was no precedence for a COVID kind of a moment, at least for the generation that we are talking about, right? At least the COVID one. COVID two, we were prepared a little bit more. So we had, from an e-commerce perspective, we have seen a huge shift, right? And specifically when it comes to the Indian market, COVID, I would, from an e-commerce perspective, it's kind of a, like from a volume and then the demand perspective, it has kind of a blessing kind of a thing in terms of it has reinvigorated the e-commerce market. It has been an inflection point from an e-commerce industry, that kind of growth the industry went through in the last almost like 2 years, almost like 30 to 40% growth, or I would say a quarterly growth is humongous, right? So we had issues, right? Because first of all, the COVID one specifically had issues with respect to the demand, because there was an issue with respect to essential and non-essential, and the essential and non-essential had its own definition across the geography of India, right? So that was one part of the issue from the demand side, where you have to identify quote unquote an essential or an unessential product from a demand perspective, and from from a supply part of it, from a last mile perspective also, you had geographies or zones within a city and pan India level where they were allowing essential and they were not allowing non-essential to be delivered. So you have to marry both those parts. So that was the biggest challenge that we had, specifically when we handled COVID in the first phase of it. So we immediately, from a demand perspective, we immediately created a consortium across all the marketplaces, because we work with a humongous lot of marketplaces and D2C brands, and also the larger players, right? And Amazon or Flipkart. And we created a hierarchy of products which could be considered as an essential and non-essential. So whenever a person was ordering, we can throw him that is his product categorized as an essential, because that was the biggest confusion. Mera product essential hai ya nahi hai. So we used to pre-inform him that is his product essential or non-essential, right? And then from an essential and non-essential, once it is defined, then you used to marry that part with respect to the kind of last mile nomenclature which was getting created with respect to the red zones and the orange zones and the green zones kind of it. And you used to tell him that these are the zones which he can cater to, and these are the zones which he cannot cater to. And probably there is a different kind of products which he can cater to, right? So we had D2C brands which had both essential and non-essential categories, but they were not focused largely on the essential part of it, because they saw a ballooning of the demand of the essential part, and they could correlate that what from which geographies the demand of essential could come in. So they built on the inventory of the essentials. They targeted a marketing activity which is specific to those geographies which is buying, which is where the essential is allowed, and similarly for the non-essentials part. So we provided a lot of intelligence basis our knowledge of the ecosystems, both from the supply part of it and demand part of it, and we provided the information back to the industry, the small-time retailers, the D2C brands, larger and smaller of those, so that they could influence their demand and build on that the trajectory of e-commerce, right? So
so one follow-up quick question over here right now, Engineer. This essential, non-essential. So was it that Shiprocket was able to place some technology in place? Because I know for sure that the service providers definitely didn't have that technology of essential and non-essential immediately coming in, correct? Or a pin code being serviceable or non-serviceable. So my point is that was Shiprocket also able to put technology in place to marry all these details, whatever are coming across, and then possibly offer it to their set of customers?
Absolutely, sir. So that was what we did on an immediate aspect. Once we learned that this is what was required by the industry, we set some attributes from a demand perspective, right? So these are the attributes. If the product fulfills this kind of attributes, there was an intelligent machine learning kind of a thing which used to throw him a particular parameter that your product is essential. And then if the seller wants to understand what kind of a demand trajectory or what kind of a supply we could provide or he could have in terms of the geography of India, having an essential and non-essential classification, he could easily understand and come speak to us. We used to provide him some kind of a machine learning tool where he could see the India and the essential part of it, and then he can marry his demand, which generates pan-India. Say, for example, a part of Kerala was non-essential. So he knows that which part is non-essential and he is not allowed to ship out there. And what kind of a demand historically he has from there. And he could negate that demand and then concentrate on the essential part of it, right? And then target his marketing with that, because you can target a Twitter or marketing mouse, which is geography specific, right? So we used to do a lot of this kind of things. And this was all done with respect to our knowledge on the field, our collaboration with our partners, and putting it back into the system so that the system has that intelligence to show it in a very plug and play and a simplified method to the end user.
So thank you, Indranil. I'll definitely come back with another set of questions. I think, we have Benjan, and Benjan is somebody who has done more than 25 years of logistics experience, correct? And he has, as I mentioned, that he has been handling many different industries, manufacturing, trading, engineering. And one thing which has been common with Benjan is that he is very great at rolling out the TMS system, the transport management systems. So my question, and obviously Benjan will quickly introduce himself. But my question to Benjan is that, does TMS increase only the efficiency and effectiveness and hence the cost part of it at your end, as in the sense as a company, or does it also help you in the customer centricity part? Over to you, Benjan.
Thank you, Malay, for the good words. Just a quick introduction. My name is Benson John, and I head the supply chain division of Orient Electric. That's a part of CK Birla Group. So I was just recalling my previous years with Samsung, that I spent long stint. One of these interactions, our MD asked us, the employees were asked, who pays you salary? So Samsung was new and it is MNC. Many of us were first time working in an MNC company. Maximum people said, Samsung gives you salary. Okay, the company where you work gives salary. Then the MD corrected, no. The customer gives you salary. The moment you forget your customer, your brand is not going to exist and the company is not going to exist and you are nowhere in the future. So that time, this is around maybe 15 years back, customer centricity was not a point of discussion. Too early for people like me in India to discuss about customer centricity. Now, coming to these COVID days, it has taught us many lessons. One of the lessons what we learned is customer centricity. How we realized, because at the beginning of this COVID days, we realized how important each customer is. Because many of the markets were closed, only some of the markets were opened in the initial stages. And wherever the markets were open, there was a rush of demand from the customers, especially it was summertime, there was a heavy demand for fans. And there was a production constraint also. So even if we were able to deliver 2 hours, 3 hours before the committed time of delivery, we were winning that customer. And believe me, TMS has helped us in a great way to connect with the customer in a far better way. Earlier, the customer used to call us, or we used to call the customer and find out whether material is delivered or not. And we saved a lot of time, because that time there was a rush of customers to the counters, and customers were wasting time in attending phone calls about deliveries and everything. What we did is, through TMS, we were able to push information about billing, dispatching, and the time, the exact time on which we will be able to deliver the products. So that has given us a lot of applause from the customer market side. And also on the saving front, it has helped us in saving almost 10% of our secondary transportation costs, because we were able to club a lot of shipments. We did a lot of road planning. During COVID days, there was lack of drivers and availability of infra was an issue. Then, thanks to TMS, we were able to, plan the dispatches far better than what we were doing manually. And we were able to, depend on technology during these times. That has helped us a lot in saving costs and serving our customers much better than the normal days. So what we did is last month we did a survey. We selected some key customers across the country and we asked them to answer to specific set of questions. So surprisingly, we are expecting a low score, but the score has come very high. One of the reasons for a high score they highlighted is you have given the materials on time to us or before time when the market was starving for materials. Then we realized how important technology and how important is agility for a supply chain professional. So, and we're still continuing the journey, and we keep on taking feedbacks on this digitization initiative from the market to improve it further. Malai, yeah.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. I think that's. I'm glad that all the methods, whatever you guys deployed, finally kept your customers happy. Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Fair. So one last round of question to all of you. I think quite a lot of our participants or people who would be listening to this, we generally tend to give a long, I would say, list of what to do. Correct. Basis our own experiences. If I had to ask Manu and each one of you, why don't each one of us help our team members over here and the people who are listening to us? At least one thing, what not to do. Correct? Never. One should never ever do that if you are taking care of your customer. Correct? Because this whole thing is on supply chain and the customer centricity. So as a supply chain professional, what is that one message which you want to give to all our listeners right now, all the audiences right now, what not to do, right? So hopefully this thing, obviously I will definitely want to share that. Who would want to go first on this? Manu, over to you.
I can. So if you allow me, Malay, I'll just go back to the question of customer centricity for a minute and then come back to this thing. So, because I was interested in some of the conversations related to e-commerce. So one of the other solutions we have come up with, just I'll take very quickly, is that there are many shippers, brands now who want to go global during this pandemic. And e-commerce seems to be the fastest growing segment. We have the stats, we know everything, right? So what we are doing is, you see, many of these smaller companies, they do not want to have a permanent establishment in a third country because they are small and upcoming companies, right? So as a solution, and again, based on the story of customer centricity, we worked with the customers, understood their pain areas, and we actually set up a trading company in Dubai, which is now the importer on record. And we then file all the VAT returns and all those things for many shippers wanting to go, So this is again about customer centricity, having your ear to the ground, as I may say, and understanding, the real pain points of the customer, because Indian shippers don't want to go and have another tax liability in a foreign country, right? So this was again a solution which came out during pandemic, only because, having that customer-centric focus. Now, to answer your question in the same theme, what not to do, especially, in these challenging times, my one single advice is always be there for the customer when he's in trouble. You see, we all came up, from the ranks as, business development people and so on. And one of the things that, which as a good practice, I should say, is there are many sales guys who book an order, and when it doesn't reach in time, you switch off the mobile phone and you just don't emerge for the next 24 hours, right? My advice would be, in today's, sort of VUCA supply chain world, be there when the customer is in pain, when they're having a challenge. Do not switch off the phone. Proactively keep the customer informed. Like Benson said, he had great reviews because he was giving ahead of schedule. Indranil also had some, great examples. But when the shipment is delayed or when you have failed in your commitment, you must inform the customer. Not that I am not available, I am not reachable to the customer. Then you've lost him for life. Because when everything is going hunky-dory, your customer may not need your your expertise to help solve the problem. And that's the time when you are needed the most. So this is my humble suggestion, if I may say so, Malay.
Thank you, Manu. Yes, that's $1 million suggestion because, so you just, irrespective of however grave a mistake somebody would have committed, it happens. In logistics, number one, you cannot be 100% right, for sure, right? So best of the best also try and reach to 90-95% or whatever that number is, correct? But still, there is, I think, to standing by your customer and at least telling him, and especially during these times, Bejan, Indranil, Raj, you will definitely agree to this, that even customers have been pretty patient enough, and they have realized and they accept the fact that there is something not right out of there in the market. So the very fact that somebody is picking up the shipment and getting it delivered is acceptable. It's not that it's not acceptable, right? Because it was a difficult time. So you didn't find people going up. So all of us are privileged to have got the chance of working from home, but all our guys on the ground were doing day in, day out service to everyone, correct? So yes, completely agree with you, Manu, on that. I think let's hear from Raj. Yeah, Manu, you are saying something.
No, not me, thanks. I was just trying to mute, yeah.
Okay. So let's quickly hear from Raj, Raj, what would be your advice on that question or on that query that, what is that one should never ever do?
I think I'll go with Manu's input, which is very much, undeniable situation it is. It's like customer is looking for you and going away from the customer. That's one of the biggest or the gravest mistake one can do in any industry. You might be in B2B or in B2C. End of the day, customer is looking for an update. And believe me, the entire generation, it's already turning out for the real-time information. Now we are habitual to see, though it's your locally grocery store guy or a medical shop or even maybe an online e-com platform or maybe international forwarders, anybody. The very first information what we are looking out as a customer, as a service provider, if you look at a basic real-time information. When I am a B2B, giving an industry to all my customers or a B2C level, but when I take the service from my customer, whom I'm turned out to be a customer to somebody, the expectation what I have is give me real-time information. It is not that if the shipment is not cleared from the customs today, there might be a XYZ reason. The officer has not come today. There is a bang or there is a holiday or sudden there is a customs officers meeting. Shipment may get delayed. That is fine. Finally, as a customer, even I expect at least you should have informed me. The typical language in warehousing and logistics. Arey, ek baar bata do. It is like we come to that level because I can inform my customer. Correct. So here, if you happen to be in touch with the actual customer or the actual consumer, and if you go away from him, it can be B2B or a B2C. I think that's one of the worst thing you can do being in the supply chain. I think that's what this era is looking out for. And all our knowledge, all our technology, all our intelligence, they basically look for this real-time information. If we are able to give that, fortunately, we are gracious enough. The Indian culture is always accommodates. They are adjustable to, we are tuned to listening problem. Okay, there is a problem. I understand. Tell me what is the next best solution you can give. The moment you give a solution, it can be a gravest mistake what you would have done. But still, since you came forward, you admitted and you're giving him a solution. Admitting is one part of it. And when you give a solution, even though the solution is not acceptable to them, but because of this one step of going forward and admitting and then giving the solution to it, any customer, B2B or a B2C, because the damage is already done. What they are looking at, how quickly the damage is getting fixed. The moment you give them the fixing time, the resolution time is much shorter than the major repair. They are happy to accept that. This is what I've experienced so far. Recent case, by mistake in my warehouse, we had on a quarantine inventory and the good inventory. By mistake, somebody in the night shift, month end problem, pressure, somebody instead of moving a good inventory, quarantine inventory have been shipped out. And very next day morning, we got to know because the first customer to receive the metal was within the shortest distance. And he popped up. The moment he popped up, we backtracked it. We said, okay, the effect is not for the one customer. The effect is to the 46 customers. And pan India level. We immediately rushed to our customer service team. We pulled out the data. We spoke to the management. We spoke to this has happened. Now, how, when, who, I all do the entire back-end investigation. I will do it. But the corrective action is I'm going to talk to the customer saying that this is what is done. The consignment is on the way. It's going to reach you in next 4 days time. But this grave mistake we already done. And the corrective action is this. Tomorrow I'm going to move the next consignment fresh to you on a typical, the term of, we give it to an FOC basis and all that terminology, what we use it. This end of the day, what I told him, I've done the mistake. Here is the solution. Pardon me. I think that's the greatest thing any service provider or any supply chain guy can do in the industry right now.
Thank you so much, Raj, for that. Yes, completely agree. The moment when you realize the mistake, definitely one should be owning that up. Because there is nothing better than that. There is nothing better than that. Agree. Thank you. So over to you, Benjamin. Anything which...
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think just to add to what Raj has said, see the word impossible or the word no should not be there in the supply chain professionals dictionary. Because COVID is the best example again. See how agile we were. We were not prepared for this kind of a scenario. It is like we are talking about the Black Swan event and everything. So it has happened all of a sudden, and and the supply chain professionals were the first one to respond. So we opened the warehouses in time. Maybe we took permissions from the authorities to open the warehouses, and we aligned with the service providers. The biggest challenge, like freight forwarding, was the biggest challenge. Mr. Manu Vala knows it. Because even now also it is the biggest challenge. The rates have gone up almost 4 or 5 times. Some cases it has gone up to 100 times also. Even then we have to do business. So the word no should not be there in any supply chain professionals industry. Sorry, dictionary at all. Like I was telling earlier, understanding the customer needs, that helps you in, that gives you a lot of money back. Like if I'm able to deliver my goods 1 day in advance, okay, my inventory turns goes better because I'm getting the money back 1 day. So if I am able to save 12 days means I am getting money 12 days in advance to my, I can reduce my working capital flow also. I can control my inventory also. So we should always keep on trying, and we should wait for the impossibilities like this, and we can make it possible.
Thank you, Benjamin. I know you are on the other side of the table. Impossible is definitely not which you would want to hear. Myself and Manu being on the other side of the table, we actually have learned the art of saying no as well, right? Something which cannot be done cannot be done. It's as simple as that, right? Rather, I will, as a service provider, say right in the very beginning, sir, this is not possible. Rather than saying, sir, I will try. Let me see, what best I can do. Okay? So yes, you are also right at your own end, being on the other side of the table. Between Benjamin, Paul Raj and Indraneel, I think. But speaking on behalf of Manu as well, I will say that it's better to say no right in the very beginning. Okay? And we'll continue to discuss this offline after. Right, Manu, am I right? Okay, I think we'll lost Manu.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next, coming on to Indraneel, last few words. We know it's 17:05, so we will definitely be wrapping it up to have few questions coming across as well. Last few words from your side, Indraneel.
Okay, what I would say, what we should not do to your question, sir, is that the more we get into the details of the supply chain, the micro part of it, more it seems to me it's a human being at the end of the day, right? It's a robot out there, and it's a chain of human working out, right? So So it has its own characteristics, its own mood swings and behavior. So I would say a lot of people talking about the technology part of it, the IoTs and the blockchains and the drone deliveries. These are actually a boardroom kind of a talk, or kind of like systems being developed. ये boardroom में नहीं होगा. You have to go to the field. You have to understand that small entrepreneur who is running a small hub, who is having probably 10, 15 people on a variable level, delivering the shipments for an Amazon, Flipkart, or anybody else, or that small truck owner who is running 1 or 2 trucks, or in an intracity or you need to understand his behavior. You need to understand his pain point, and there is a lot which technologies can do. You have to marry these 2 points: the human behavior, the supply chain human behavior part of it with the technology, and there lies the innovation. Right now, probably we are missing that part to a great extent. We talk on boardrooms, we create products or probable solutions, and the solutions probably do not justify the actual problem which exists. So that would be my ending thought.
Thank you so much, Ranil. So essentially what you were saying is that don't do Chintan Bathak, become a Karyakarta as well, right? Instead of just thinking and then coming up with a solution, go do something on the ground. I agree with you. I agree. So I think just because you have mentioned that part, Neil, I'll tell you that a couple of days back, I was speaking to a few people and trying to understand. So we at DTDC were trying to sort out some, I would say, some X factors, something next. What's next, correct? So on some of those programs, I learned something very new, and that was too much into the customer centricity part of it. And I'll just quote you that example. So we were speaking to a few technology companies, and those companies, they said, because we asked them as what are those projects on which they have been working upon. So one of the projects which they had worked upon was in Australia. There is a company which is into this e-scooters, correct? I don't remember that name. They had started getting a lot of complaints back to them saying that their people who used to drive those e-scooters, a lot of tickets were getting cut, right? Because they were parking it on those no parking areas, going across and thinking that it's e-scooter, this is beyond this. The company tried to educate, whatever, but ultimately they were getting a lot of concerns. Ideally, they should not have been getting, but they were getting a lot of complaints. These guys who manufactured those e-scooters, can you believe this? They went across, tied up with technology companies, and came up with a solution wherein all those lanes by lanes, they were kind of during the particular hours, right? So the entire Sydney, say for example, the entire roads, everything was manned. And during those hours, whichever hours there was no parking lane, if an e-scooter guy was coming across, and should he wanted to switch off his e-scooter, because these are all app controlled, correct? He just could not, or they could not switch off their scooter. So obviously they had to go somewhere else to park it across. Can you believe this? At least for me, once when I heard it for the first time, that an e-scooter organization, through their apps, they started controlling the behavior as well to an extent to just take care of the challenges which their possible riders were facing. Right? So I think, yes, Bejan mentioned, I think Indranil as well mentioned that, technology definitely is something which will help us get closer to our customers. So I think, we are on 17.10 right now. I think, quickly with the help of CII team over here, can we open up the floor for some quick questions, whichever way it works? IT team.
Riaz, any questions you have to share with Mr. Malai?
There is no questions in chat box.
Okay. We have informed the audience. As it happens, if there are any questions, they can key in and then leave it in the chat box. As of now, there are no questions.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll wait for so we will kind of wrap this up, Dr. Bhanumati. So on behalf of all the panels over here, all the panel members over here, we are extremely thankful to CII and all the sponsors of this event. I think without them, it would not have been possible for us also to come together, kind of have an interaction. So thank you, Dr. Bhanumati. It has been a great pleasure being a part of this amazing conference, whatever you are having. I think the panel has been amazingly great. Some real time, whatever is happening on the ground, it has been definitely been shared. Some great examples. I think some of you guys who would want to reach out to us, please feel free to do that. I think we have our email ID with you. So thank you, Dr. Bhanumati, once again. Thank you, thank you, John. Thank you, Manu, Benjan. So on everybody's behalf, I kind of say thanks to the entire CIA. Thank you so much. So we'll wait for a while. Anything else, Manu, Benjan, Indranil, Raj?
Well, thanks, Malay. Thank you, Dr. Bhanumati, for having us on this panel. It's been very interesting. And since we have another minute or so, talking about real life examples, in this particular time, I won't mention, you talked about scooters. There's a scooter company who's a client of ours. And because the freight rates are going crazy, we are taking completely built up scooters into Dubai, dismantling them into parts. And so if there are 200 scooters going in one container, we are able to fit 300 scooters in a flat pack, by taking out and reassembling at destination. Wow. So when you are thinking about solutions, these are solutions which you have to be dynamically sort of providing to customers. So I mean, I'm just taking the opportunity to, share with you that, yes, we all have to find really different solutions.
I completely agree with you, Manu. And one quick example I'll give from DTDC itself, what we did. So initially, work from home when it started, everybody obviously, the laptops, the desktops, everything was. I think, that was the first time wherein we committed the mistake of saying yes to many a company. Sir, we will transport it. But in the process, we did face a lot of challenge, I'm saying, because, laptops and desktops are very different ballgame altogether, unless until it is in the original packaging. We do humongous amount of laptops for some of our largest customers like HP and all. But those are in the original packaging, correct? You would believe, after having those initial things, and thanks to the internal team, what we had, we came out with an absolutely amazing, great packaging solution for laptop, which has become a big time hit, right? And because of that, out of 100, I will say less than half of that is going bad at all. In comparison to that, it was earlier maybe 7, 8 of them, correct? So if you shipped 100, 7, 8 were getting affected, has come down from 7, 8 to something as less than half.
Terrific.
And just because the entire solution was developed. Because we are not a packaging company, but we went ahead and we developed that because that's what our customers require.
Correct. That's a real agility. Actually, COVID has taught us all of these things. Yeah. So we were having the ability, but we forgot, this has given an opportunity for us to perform.
Correct. In fact, one of our divisions, Interim, which is actually into relocations, this is a new business revenue segment started because a lot of customers working from home, the Oracles and whatever else, the Lenovo's. Yeah. So we started a new division where we are moving the equipment, the office equipment from their office to the home of the staff, setting it up, putting the firewalls in place and, all the security protocols and doing it. So it's like a reverse logistics, But this is a completely new business. And when everything was locked down, this was a new business that started. And now when offices are opening, the same customer saying, now you please relocate from the individual's house back to the office. So I think in every challenge, there's always an opportunity. Yeah. Yes, it's just, your approach and outlook, basically. Yeah.
In fact, what Manuji has shared, the electric scooter example, it took me way back in my beginning of my career, 99, 2000. This similar portion, we did it when I was in Mahindra & Mahindra. In a tractor division, we had a project called, that time in Upper North Lake, in a part of India, we didn't have our factory. It was, we had the satellite plant. And all the tractors which was made in Nagpur and here in Kandivali in Mumbai, we used to send it in a SKD format. It's called SKD. Entire tractor was dismantled in such a way the tires are going in a different trailer, the bodies are going in a different trailer, and the fenders and the body parts are going in a different trailer. And in the satellite plant, it is just getting assembled. Here and there is some touch-up because of our infrastructure quality. Here and there, some touch-up is required, then the last mile delivery used to happen. So for me, it was like, okay, in some countries they have done recently because of the situation forced. But as in India, as a country, when we saw there is a constraint of putting a plant in one more part of the, another part of the country, in the corner of the country, here we had such kind of a solution, which is already rolled out quite long back. So situation and the scenario comes across and it pushes back to reinvent the same thing and again implement in a different dimension altogether. I'm happy to know that it's these things are evolving in a different industry, similar patterns. Thank you, Manoj, for sharing that.
Thank you. So I think all of us have these anecdotes. But I think Malay, we are out of time, right?
Yeah, it looks like, yeah.
Dr. Bhanu, there is no question.
On behalf of CII, it's really my pleasure and privilege to propose this vote of thanks to McKinsey and Company for giving a lovely, wonderful theme for today and a nice session. And my sincere thanks to all the top dignitaries on the dais and interesting audience. And finally, to the sponsors who really supported CII and made it. So with another very interesting auto supply chain conference on November 12th, we will meet you online. Thanks to every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Malay. Thanks, Manu.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Benson. Thanks, Indranil. Bye. All the best.